Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock on August 10th, room 205 in the town hall. So the meeting is officially called to order. And let's start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First order of business will be to approve the minutes of July 27th. Everyone got a copy of the minutes, had an opportunity to review it. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? We have a motion, second? Second. Any abstentions?
And Ron.
Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Okay. Before we get started, first of all, thank you all for coming. This is a very large crowd, and we're very happy that you all took time off to come and see us. I hear there's a concert on the green, and 75 people who said they would be here are not going to be here because they're at the concert on the green, but that's okay. We're streaming, so people who cannot make it physically to be here will be able to see this on the website at any time that they want to turn it on. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off.
Or put it on vibrate.
I would also like to thank the members of the task force for the hard work that they have done. Not only have we had the formal meetings of the group that we've called, but we also have work groups. And the work groups have met independently to prepare for the presentation that you're going to be seeing tonight. So a significant amount of effort has come in. We're all volunteers. We all care deeply about our town, and I just want to take an opportunity to thank all the members of the task force for the hard work that they've done. What I'd like to do is move to a slide that you probably didn't anticipate, but today is Jeff Manville's birthday. Let's hear it. Jeff asked that we hold. Jeff asked that we hold the meeting here because he thought he might get some presents if we did that. So, in all honesty, Jeff, would you like to say a few words and before we get started officially?
Yeah, thank you to the task force.
Sorry.
Oh my God.
It won't pick up unless you talk here.
I didn't know we had. Did we buy one of these recently?
We did. Because of your birthday.
It's expensive.
That's your present.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you, John and Jennifer, for spearheading this. Thank all of you for the work you're doing. I see it's making a lot of good progress, which is beneficial. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. A lot of familiar faces and some unfamiliar faces, which is nice to see for a change, and I appreciate that. I don't know if I can stay all night. I have a promise to get home for some events that include me, so I'll be here for a while and I'll try to catch up.
You can bring back some cake and we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, I skipped over a couple of slides there to get to Jeff's. In any case, as we've gone through this process, people have asked us, well, why are we having a strategic planning task force? You know, what was the impetus for that? And in fact, on January 1st, 2009, the town charter included the statement that you see up there, that the first selectman duties shall include preparing and annually updating a strategic plan for the town, such plans subject to the approval of the Board of Selectmen. For a number of reasons, that was not acted upon up until March 2nd of this year, when Jeff Manville sent out a letter to the community on strategic planning, and that kicked it off. And Jeff, we thank you for taking that step. And then on the 20th of April, the Board of Selectmen unanimously approved the formation of the group that you see before you tonight, this Southbury Strategic Planning Task Force. We thought it might be beneficial to do some definitions of what a strategic plan is not. It's not created by the government. It's not driven by one goal or one idea or set of demands. It's not about trying to form a plan that is all things to all people. It's not about everything we do. It should not be full of jargon, and it should not be left on the shelf. Very important. There's many strategic plans that people work very hard on, and then they're put in the credenza and nobody ever sees them again. So we're very aware of that, and we're going to work not only to create the plan, but to implement it and update it on an annual basis. I'm not going to read this for you, but I just want you to take a minute to look at it. So go through 1, 2, and then number 3, the underline is with a focus on the future, so I'll give you a minute to take a look at that. Okay. So if we look at the future, there's a bunch of things that we know that might occur. Will they occur? We have no idea. We're aware that they might occur. So one of the things about planning is you try to anticipate what's coming down the pike in the future. So things that we know, and when the public comes up, if they know about things that we don't know, please tell us. But we know that the I-84 is going to be upgraded. They're going from Cheshire to Danbury with 3 lanes. That's certainly going to have an impact on Southbury, since we have 4 exits off Southbury. Recently, there was talk about a high-speed train going from New York to Boston, stopping in Danbury and Waterbury, and we're right in the middle of Danbury and Waterbury. What does that mean? I have no idea. We should be aware of it. New housing developments. There was senior housing proposed, Pierce Hollow Village, other housing activity. People have talked about the impact of the Tawanek Energy Center in Oxford. What is the impact? What does it mean? How do we prepare for it? The IBM site utilization. As a matter of fact, Ann Armino, who was the chair of the Economic Development Commission, is in contact with the people at IBM, and they had indicated interest in participating in some manner, shape, or form, no vote, but in what the task force is involved in. So thank you, Ann, for bringing that to our attention. There's still talk about a community center in Southbury for the area around Southbury. There's talk about regionalization for public safety and health. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's on the agenda. People have been talking about the sewer avoidance policy that's incorporated into our current plan of conservation and development, and what impact that might have on commercial and industrial development in the town. We're all aware of potential cuts in funding to municipalities. It's been in the news. There is no state budget. What will that mean to Southbury? Don't know. And there's been talk about need for tax incentives to attract growth on the grand list. Oxford has a program. Middlebury has a program. Southbury does not have a program. So we don't know if we need one or not, but at least we should know what's going on in the communities around us. So here's the task force. Jeff is the ex officio. You can see all the members. The great majority of them are seated up here around this table. Bill Sorowski and Dolores are town employees. They are here to advise us, but they do not have a vote on the task force. One other thing that we think it's important that you know is that we're not just talking to ourselves. We are talking to other towns that have strategic plans, people in Seymour and Cheshire, Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. Once again, I'm not going to read all this, but I'll give you a minute to take a look at it. The town department heads, the heads of town boards and commissions, and a whole bunch of other people. So if you take a minute, you can take some time to look at that. In the audience tonight, we have a member of the Connecticut Economic Research Center. If you could identify yourself somewhere in the audience.
Hi, I'm
Courtney?
Anderson, Vice President of Municipal Services, Connecticut Economic, it's actually Resource Center, but we do a lot of
Resource Center,
we
sorry.
do a lot of research.
Okay.
In addition to a lot of municipal economic development support around the state.
Right, thank you. Courtney has offered to help us. We're going to be doing a community survey, and one of the things that CERC does is help to put that together. They have a significant amount of experience in that area, and Courtney is going to meet with us to talk more about that. Thank you for coming, Courtney. Okay, with the help of Paul Butler, Paul is a strategic planning guru. He has written a book. He's famous. He tries not to make a big point of that, but he is an acknowledged expert in strategic planning, and he is a resident of Southbury. So here we are, and we don't have to pay him. Anyways, he helped. He helped as we were laying out our strategy here. He came up with 4 phases that he felt that we would be going through. The items in red are things that we believe we've already accomplished. The next thing on the list in black there is a community survey, and then a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then you can see some of the other things that we'll be doing as we go forward. The reason that this is important, it gives us a roadmap of where we are and what we've already accomplished so that we can keep track of our progress. So the question is, people say, well, how could Southbury be as wonderful as it is without planning? Is this the first time we've done planning? And the answer is no. We have all kinds of plans. We have a town charter that tells the town how to run. We have a plan of conservation and development, which is on the planning website. There's a implementation guide on how to implement the plan. We have a streetscape for Main Street, comprehensive plan for exit 16 Strongtown, comprehensive plan for Southbury Center, and a comprehensive plan for Southford. So we have many plans. Many of them are land use related, but they also touch on economic development and quality of life, which we'll get into in a few minutes. We also have regulations. The Code of Ordinances is a way for us to access the legislative rules and regulations that govern the town. We have a bunch of regulations, and I've already mentioned the items that are below that. So we do have plans. We're not the only people coming up with a plan. There's other plans that are currently underway. Our effort, the Strategic Planning Task Force, is looking at the mix, changing the mix of the grand list, efficient local government and quality of life. There's a committee on town-owned properties, which is looking at the Volpe-Rosen property at exit 13 and 14, and the Stevenson property at exit 15. We have work going on looking at Region 15 enrollment and facilities. As you know, the population of our school system is going down, and they're looking at facilities. Do we need all the facilities that we have? And there's a big study going on at the request of the planning department up at Southbury Training School, studying the potential future uses of their facilities, buildings, and land. So there's a lot of work going on, a lot of planning. So on June 8th, we formed work groups We established initial goals, started a debate, did some analytical thinking, and have been doing a significant amount of research. So those are the three groups, and as you can see, they're all interrelated. You can't talk about one without having an impact on the other. The first one there, the emphasis on commercial growth, currently the grand list is comprised of 83% residential and 17% commercial in Southbury. So here's the groups. These are the members, and the people in gray are the facilitators. I'm facilitator for the first group, Jennifer for the second group, and Paul for quality of life, and those are the members. So these were things that we felt we needed to look at. Some of these I've already mentioned. Once again, I'm not going to read them, but these are things that we have initially talked about. And I say initially because we're going to be doing a community assessment questionnaire or survey that I mentioned earlier, but we needed to do some work to get the platform going for what it is that we were going to be dealing with. So the real impact will be when we get the questionnaire out to the people of Southbury, residents and businesses, but these are some of the initial considerations that we had. So the question is, what is a grand list? And Paul brought to our attention something called the pizza man. And nobody knew what he meant by the pizza man. But in working with corporate organizations, he finds out that people are talking, but they don't know the meaning of the terms and or the words that they're using. So we use the pizza man analogy, whereby if you bring in a pizza man who only knows about pizza, ask him to listen to what's going on, and if he doesn't understand anything, to ask a question. And what he discovered is when the pizza man asked the question and an explanation was given, other people in the group said, I didn't know that's what you meant. So they were in fact learning more as a result of the pizza man asking the simple question, what do you mean by that? So using that example, we're going to tell you what we mean by grand list. Aggregate valuation of taxable property within a given town. And Connecticut, usually the mix is 80% residential and the rest is commercial and industrial. And the cities usually have a different number because they get more state aid than the towns. So the community assessment questionnaire that we talked about is going to talk about how do you grow the grand list. Should we have tax incentives in Southbury? Should we market it better than we are? We are currently marketing it through economic development. Do we need an economic development professional, a full-time person to do that? The other question is, do we want to grow the grand list? We may find out when we do the questionnaire that everybody's happy with the way it is. We don't need more commercial and industrial. If that's what we find out, guess what? Then that's what we'll do. We'll stay where we are. However, the impact of that may be that there could be an increase in taxes or a corresponding cutback in services if that's what the town wants. But that's up to the people here. And then what would be the potential impact on the quality of life? One of the people on our team is Ron Pugliese. Ron, raise your hand. Ron is CEO of the Economic Development Organization in Naugatuck. And he mentioned that there's 3 ways that you can work with an economic development professional. Municipal employee, such as Watertown, Newtown, Oxford, and Cheshire. You can contract with a person to do it. Beacon Falls is considering that. Or you can do a public-private partnership, which in fact is a nonprofit organization, such as Naugatuck or Shelton. Once again, we have no opinion, we're just gathering information. People say, once we understand the grand list, the idea of the grand list is so that the town can collect taxes to support the budget. So let's not assume that everybody knows about the budget. So, how much is residential? 83%, commercial industrial 17%. We already mentioned that. We compared ourselves to 5 other towns. Roughly, we felt that these were similar in many ways to Southbury: Brookfield, Guilford, Monroe, Simsbury, and Stonington. We looked at their grand list percentages. We're 83-17, and you can see what the other ones are. And remarkable as it may seem, we're better than all of those 5. So does that mean we should stop? No. Just means that we now have more information about how these other towns look. The municipal budget in town, everybody said, John, everybody knows what the budget in town is. I said, well, if they do, then this is redundant, but if not, this will be interesting. The town government budget in Southbury is $21.7 million. The Region 15 budget is $45.9 million, for a total municipal budget of $67.6. Region 15, we spend 45.9, as I just said. Middlebury spends 21.6 for a total of 67.5 for Region 15. And the Region 15 was formed in 1968. They're the largest regional school district in Connecticut, and they've got 7 schools, 4 in Southbury and 3 in Middlebury. And the grand list for Southbury is $2.1 billion, and in Middlebury it's $943 million. So the reason that's an important number is if we're trying to grow the grand list and we bring in a hair salon, what impact will that have on the grand list? Not much. Will the movie theater have an impact on the grand list? Yes, because that's a big operation. But what this tells you is that growing the grand list is a significant task. Okay, our group is done, and we're turning it over to Jennifer to talk about efficient local government. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, thank you all for coming. I've always said local government matters most because it's your neighbors that you're electing, and it's the people that are most accountable to you because you see them in the food store, and you can approach them much more easily about how they're spending your tax dollars. Efficiency in local government equates not only to money, but it also equates to time savings. So our group has been doing extensive research comparing the 5 towns John's previously mentioned to Southbury's services. Now, establishing the services that we have is the first step to improving efficiency, because if we don't need to improve something, then why address it? If it's broke, why fix it? So we're assessing that. And through the use of technology, more accurate information is disseminated to the public, and that entails more public involvement. You have greater understanding of what's being provided to you and for you. We've identified Public Safety Police Department. Now, many of you who have lived here for a period of time know back in 2009, we did a town vote to go to an independent police force. That vote did not pass at the time, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at that issue again. Nothing is off the table. This group gets together and we all brainstorm, and we disagree, passionately sometimes, but we keep saying there's no bad idea. We've also addressed public works, and both John and Ron Conti, John Riley of Board of Finance, and Ron Conti, the head of the Heritage Village Masters Association, have been doing a lot of work understanding what services we currently provide at what cost as compared to other towns. Town Hall Administration, Mary, and now Justin, have just gotten some research from the Conference of Connecticut Municipalities, and we're going to be filtering through that to understand forms of government. There's been discussion in this town about changing the form of government from first selectman to town manager. What's best for Southbury? Again, nothing is off the table. Public information. I don't know if you all use our website, but we happen to have an exceptional website in Southbury. And that started maybe 7, 8 years back, maybe even a little bit longer. And Republicans and Democrats agree that there is tremendous value in relaying information. And Mary she spearheaded that analysis, and she learned a lot about town governance and services provided by our town just through that process. And again, our social and senior services, almost parallel to none. We have a very good senior center, but we are getting into the depths of these focuses for now. We've put the question marks there because we don't know that we've addressed all of the areas that are critical to the citizens in Southbury. So we have this session. We're going to have more sessions. We're going to do the survey, as John mentioned, and we're going to ask for your feedback to there's an email on the agenda that we would like for you to provide your written feedback, as many pages, as much as you want to tell us. We want to hear it. So we're trying to have a very open and transparent process, and we appreciate and invite your feedback. If you could switch. Yep. So currently, as I mentioned, we are, there's 6 of us in our committee now, and we are all addressing different critical areas of focus. We are surveying not only our town, our department heads, we will be surveying our boards and commissions, we are surveying the services provided, we're doing our town comparisons, and then we're going to get into analyzing the value of our services. Are they the right services? Do we want to modify those services? And we're going to look to you for feedback on that as well. That's the internal, external scan process of the phases. The phase chart that we had, we're in phase 2. You didn't get to look at it very quickly, but very long, but we are through September going to be working on phase 2, and that's going to be doing that strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities process. And right now,
By the way, all of these charts, because you said we went through it very quickly, every chart that we're showing here is going to be on the website, so it'll be available to everybody.
This
So
presentation will be up tomorrow morning,
the presentation will be there.
so you'll be able to get it. I'm sorry we don't have handouts, but we're trying to be green. So these are our towns that we're comparing Southbury to, or with, and those are the critical services. And again, the question mark, because we want to hear from you. We want to hear what areas are of interest to you, what's going to benefit Southbury the most. Mary, Mary is our team leader. I don't know if you have anything to add?
Well, I think it's been pretty comprehensive so far. Can you hear me?
You have to
turn the mic on.
turn the mic on. There's a little button there. There you go.
Okay, I'm also learning about technology, apparently. Well, I think we covered, the essence of what we've been doing pretty well, but I moved to Southbury a little less than 3 years ago now, and I decided to volunteer because, first of all, I've worked with strategic planning and healthcare, and I wanted to be able to utilize some of my skills. I wanted to get to know about the town, and I wanted to be able to participate in working with, what our future is going to look like. So all I can say is that my experience so far has been phenomenal. I've met a lot of great people. I've learned a lot of things. I have a long way still to go, but volunteers are always needed. So thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Okay, Paul.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we have a common theme, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Moser here, who's our team leader, to kind of take us through things. But Trish, Susan, Bill, and Bob, are you here? Put your hands up, please. I'd just like to recognize the team. Anybody in the back? Thank you. Do you know her, John?
I've seen her once or twice.
We're our theme is how good can we be? Because we're pretty good. We spent some initial time looking at all the things that, even personally, what brings us to a place to want to live here, raise our kids here, and maybe sometimes retire here. And there's a lot of things going well. And so what we did is really start our conversation and our work looking at all those things that we individually thought would make Southbury high in the ranks of a great place to live. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Rob, team leader. He's going to take us through this, okay?
Okay with them, not okay with me. No. Yeah, so I mean, we were challenged, I think, a little bit more than the other team. We didn't have a grand list that we can point to with a bunch of numbers on it, or a list of town services that we can focus efficiency improvements on. We had this amorphous quality of life, and when it was tossed at us, that was our goal, quality of life. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to convert that into a goal, right? And what does that mean as a tactical goal to approach, and that's what we came up with: promoting and preserving a healthy, vibrant, diverse, and safe Southbury, enhancing the quality of life for all residents. And then we got into the things that Paul talked about. What does that mean to everyone? And we started tossing around those initial focus areas below. Again, going back to the theme of what other teams have said, this is where we're looking for input, whether it be through meetings like this or the survey that we're looking to put out shortly, but trying to understand what do the people in town believe are the issues that affect quality of life and make Southbury the place that they want to live. And you saw one of the earlier charts, regardless of what we do with the ground list, if the town doesn't want to do that, enhance the ground list, or if government is running as efficiently as it can be, we still have the quality of life aspects of a strategic plan that we need to put in place to help guide the town leadership through the next 5, 10 years, whatever the horizon's going to be for what we produce. I think that was it on this that you wanted? Yeah. This one was interesting because as we were out there trying to research how other people measure quality of life and what we were thinking about, one of the resources we kept getting pointed back to were these rankings of cities and the quality of life indexes in various magazines and research studies. So we got this idea that says, well, part of what we should be looking at is understanding how do we want to measure it, and how do we want to propose in the strategic plan a way to measure it to see if we're successful going forward. So we can say this is where we are now based on something. We want to be improved at some level 5 years from now, and put in place this understanding of how we're going to measure quality of life and know when we're going to be successful or not. So some of the things that came up in some of the various studies that we looked at were the ones listed here: education, economy, public safety, civic engagement. So again, we're looking at this, we're trying to understand what we want to do. We're going to seek some input from the town, and whatever we're going to obviously measure as successful are going to be the priority areas that we're going to focus on as well in the plan that we produce. And this next slide just highlights kind of outside of the survey that everyone keeps talking about, what we're actively engaged in, looking at the boards and commissions in the government right now that affect quality of life items, getting an understanding of what they're doing. Do they have plans in place? If they do, what are they? Looking for additional community inputs. We're still kind of strategizing on how we want to do that, formal, informal, just part of this process, outside of this process. Looking at what other towns are doing and what other innovations there might be around quality of life moving forward. So that's kind of where we stand from our task force.
Okay, good. Thanks, Rob. So, thank you for your attention. That's a brief overview of a great deal of work by a large number of people. What we're going to do now, since we have a very nice group here, is turn it over for public comments. So, what we'd like to do is have people come up to the microphone, state your name and your address, give us your thoughts on what we've said, any feedback you want to give us, any ideas that you might have. And we have 3 questions that we'll talk about after the public comments are done, which is, why did you move to Southbury? What amenities are missing? And what is the desirability of commercial expansion in town? And that's the email address that Jennifer was talking about a few minutes ago. At any time, you can send comments to that. We get them, and then we'll incorporate that into the work that we're doing. So, public comments. Come on up.
When you come up, please state your name and your address, and limit your conversation, please limit your comments to 5 minutes, and if we have time to go back around, we certainly will do that.
Okay, Lorraine Marcantonio, Heritage Village, Southbury. I'm interested in the issue of their sewer avoidance and how it interacts with our conservation and development. I'd like to get more in-depth analysis of how they impact each other. I love Southbury, but I do know, future-focused, we need to look at economic development. So I want to see more in-depth analysis of those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Edelson. I live at 609B Heritage Village. I think you wanted to know that. And I want to thank all of you for all the work you've been doing over the summer while everybody else was obviously at the beach. You guys were here doing all of this. I'd make first one question for John. You said at the beginning, and I think you should address this, that this is a strategic plan is not done or created by the government. But that's what the charter says, for the first selectman to create this. So I'd ask you to address that, because that statement seems to be a contradiction for me.
Yeah, and
You don't have to address it now, but I just want to say,
Oh.
sitting in the audience, seems like you're contradicting yourself when you're all here on behalf of government to create a Town of Southbury strategic plan per the charter. I did want to make one correction. We did have a strategic plan in 2014. John and I worked on that. I bring that up because your initial document that you looked at, 4 of the 5 goals that were stated came from, word for word, from the plan that we put forward back in 2014 and was used in the budgetary process in 2015. There was a 5th goal that was not included, and you've obviously taken those 4 and done some consolidating. That's fine to do that, but I think we should recognize that work has gone on before and has identified these goals. And in addition, which I haven't seen that you're working on yet, is, again, per the charter, to have a process for updating this annually. We addressed that in the paper that was produced in 2014. It was never accepted by the Board of Selectmen because they were more interested in things like an animal control facility. That was a higher priority for them back then. So we never resolved that process, although I would point out the Planning Commission basically wrote us to say they agreed with the process and were appreciative of the thinking that went into it and the inclusion of the Plan of Conservation and Development's implementation guide. A couple of points on some of the things that were raised at tonight. On the mix of the grand list, I think you got to look at the internet. You know, there are exogenous and there are endogenous effects on any organization. And the internet is what's really affecting, in my mind, what's happening on Main Street. You're seeing retail basically disappear, and you're seeing a lot of services starting to disappear. So even if you attract businesses, and John alluded to this, they might have no effect on the grand list. I think that really brings the strategic question, which is why are we still using a grand list in the state of Connecticut as the basis of taxation? This is an idea that came about 200 years ago. It was a measure of wealth back then. Property was wealth. We could bring in Google, could put in an office here and would have almost no effect on our grand list. And then they might be making billions of dollars out of that office, and we can't touch it. So that's not just a Southbury issue, but if Southbury is going to think about its future income, its future taxation, we've got to start to lobby the state to think more creatively about how do small towns, any town really, have a reasonable basis for taxing. The grand list, from my point of view, is an anachronism. On the efficient local government, I had this conversation so many times with other mayors and first selectmen. They would say everyone in Connecticut will tell you that their town is the most efficient. That's not the question. The question, if you're in the corporate world, to create efficiency, you look for consolidation. I used to say to Bill Surowski, nobody gets excited in Southbury about the way we pay checks. Okay? We do a great job of paying it. But do we really need the staff that we have today with the modern technology that we have that says we can't combine on a regional basis to be more efficient? If you draw the boundary around Southbury, you're going to be very hard pressed to be any more efficient. You can't do things with, a part of a person. What you can do is share resources with other towns, and you can think about regionalization. From my point of view, that's the only way you get to efficiency. That's real financial, has a financial impact. The other endogenous effect that I think you need to address in efficient local government is volunteerism. We all talk about our volunteers, you mentioned it before, but we have a responsibility as a town to provide two very important services, and maybe that swings into quality of life. One of those is ambulance, and the other is fire. You will hear from, or you will see with our ambulance services, they are not based on volunteers anymore. They're called volunteer associations, but they're all staffed. Not all, but growing percentages. The same with the fire department. You will hear statements that we have lots of men and women who are part of our fire department, but they, more than in the past, work out of town. So it's nice to have a volunteer, but it's more important to have a volunteer who's physically available during the day. If they're working in Danbury, it's not going to help to put that fire out. Now, moving forward on these two items is our responsibility as a town. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but we want to make sure we're thinking about it in the most efficient way. And finally, I would just like to say under the quality of life, if you're not talking about the drug problem, then you're really not talking about what's going on in Southbury. We have a very important organization, SMART, Southbury, Middlebury, acting responsibly together. I know John's been to many of their meetings. This is a severe problem, and to think it's not part of our town is wrong. SMART did a survey, I'm going to say 6 years ago, and what it identified, identified many things, was our lack of community assets. Lack of community assets that our children need, and our adults for that matter, to stay away from drug addiction, whether it's alcohol, prescription drugs, whatever. So I think you got to start to build that in as something we have to address as a community. Thank you for your time. These three questions, you don't want to know those now, right?
We're going to come back
No,
to them.
we'll come back.
Thank you.
Next.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to applaud everyone for the great job on the strategic plan. And being in law enforcement for 33 years, still an active member of the Bridgeport Police Department, I recognize how important it is to make sure you have a mission statement and a strategic plan. And that being said, I take exception to a few of the things that are in the strategic plan, particularly when it comes to public safety. How to measure quality of life. Education is extremely important, but with that goes our educators and our schools and everything associated with it. Economy, very, very important, but public safety, in my opinion, should be number one, all right? And police and fire are very, very important, as well as the importance of our own police department. And as we go to the towns that we compared against, all right? Brookfield, they have their own police department. Guilford has their own police department. Monroe has their own police department. Simsbury has their own police department. And Stonington has their own police department. Now, what does that mean? That means we're behind the curve. That means that the town of Southbury does not have adequate policing, not because the officers, which our son is one and our nephew is another, aren't due diligent and professionals in what they do. There's a leadership piece that's associated with policing, and it's called the chain of command. And we're without that here in Southbury. And the reason we are is because we're stuck somewhere between the belief that we're okay as a constabulary under the state police, and we don't really want to touch the hot button issue of policing because it becomes contentious when it comes to, as in 2009, Jennifer, as you made mention to, a referendum went forward, it failed because of whatever reason it did, and we didn't get our own police department. We have more assets in the town of Southbury that many small towns, such as the ones I mentioned, don't have, all right? They don't have the police department we currently have. They don't have the next-gen system we currently have. They don't have the association with the due diligence of professional police officers that we have. It's necessary for the town of Southbury to have its own police department. If you're talking about drugs, like Mr. Edelson said, okay? Now, I'm going to be self-serving as far as our son's concerned. He just went through the DARE program and graduated last Friday. The importance of that is huge for our students in our school. The education associated with how we do business for our children by having mentors who are the police come in and really drive home the concerns with drugs is huge. We don't do such a good job with that. because there's a lot of drug concerns in the town of Southbury. There's transients on 84. When you're talking about changing the number of lanes, as it is right now, 84 is a transportation route for good people, commerce and transportation, and criminals, all right? So unless you're freeze-dried or we're doing hard time somewhere and don't recognize some of the concerns that are associated with crime today, you really need to recognize that Southbury, number one concern is public safety. Look at it on a national level, look at it on an international level. If you want to make it a destination town, if you want to have individuals, as the Arminos did, 1988, for quality of life, you need to structure the police department and public safety. Mr. Edelson alluded to some of the issues associated with volunteers in fire and ambulance. Those are huge issues. Those are huge issues. If you want to gravitate younger families, as we were, to come to the town of Southbury for a safe and beautiful environment, which it is, you need to make sure that they see that what I've called down in Bridgeport, a halo of security around your town. It's very, very important. I'll leave you with that. Thank you for your time, and great job.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Next.
I remember you.
Hi.
I remember you from the first meeting.
Yeah, I came here to the first meeting because I had some concerns, and I want to thank you all.
Name and address.
My name is John Munno, 254 Lakemere Drive,
Okay.
Southbury, Connecticut. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm just going to pass a picture around taken from the Oxford Airport over by the nice restaurant up there. I used to look out over the hills and see the beautiful hills. Now it's incredible to see the size of a power plant going into Oxford. And you talk about quality of life. You know, when the air you breathe damages your health, you know, when the air around you is poison and it poisons the land, then you don't have quality of life anymore. And why did I move to Southbury was because of what was going on in Oxford with a one-sided view of growing a grand list. And I understand, you know, we have expenses, and I applaud you on all your work to balance the budget of this town. It must be a very, keep you up at night, especially what's going on with Connecticut and Malloy, and nobody knows what kind of money that they're going to have to run their towns. You know, it's a very unnerving situation. So, you know, that was my main concern why I came the first day, was because I seen a real thrust of this great solution, you know, of grow a grand list and life's going to be wonderful. But I've lived in so many places across this country, and I've seen so many towns destroy the quality of life and the beauty they had because they got into this idea of, you know, let's grow this and put Costco's and shopping malls and then everything's going to be great. So does Southbury have all the amenities? No, that's not why I moved here. I'll go to Danbury. I'll go to Waterbury. You know, I'll go elsewhere to do my major shopping, but I can sleep nice here. And when you grow a town, you have traffic. You have to expand roads, as it is in Southbury. There's times when it takes me 15 minutes just to get from one end of town to the other. And then I think of, like right by the South Britain exit, that traffic light, and you think of it growing a town, and it creates public safety issues, other complexities. So that's my main concern, really, is as, you know, we do have this meeting, that we do it intelligently. Because of what I saw in Oxford, it was all about tax incentives, come on in, come on in, come on in. It didn't matter what the business was, it was all about the money. And at a certain point, you really start destroying the quality of life of your town. So thank you all for your work and your wisdom and all that you've done, because
Did you
come
get your
here
phone
week
back?
after week after week.
Did you get your phone back?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I don't feel like the town needs to grow a lot. You know, a little bit is nice here, but just nice and slow.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Public comments, anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Michelle Zomer. I live at 242 White Birch Drive. I moved to Southbury 17 years ago. This is I think my first time I've shown up here at Town Hall. I think my time has come. I've gotten very excited about this strategic planning. Actually, I met Ann Armino. Yes, I went to the Film Commission meeting one time, and you're doing very well with all that. I probably don't have time to get through all my ideas, so I'm submitting them in writing.
Thank you.
I'll probably just focus on a few top-line things that I think are particularly important, inspiring maybe. One of the things, I know a lot of people in Southington. My family owns a business that's around for 80 years, and I have a lot of contacts in Southington. So I called the economic development director to ask them how, what their data looks like. Their town, and actually you in your, what you've been looking at so far is towns that look like ours. And I might suggest you look at towns that could look like ours in 10 years or 20 years. Southington is about the same size as Southbury, land mass, but there are 42,000 people in Southington. In Southbury, we have, I think I counted 16 restaurants. In Southington, they have over 500 restaurants. So for sure, I live here now, not in Southington. I do love the quality of life here. I love the dignity of this town and the quiet of it, but certainly there are areas where we can grow and improve. One of the things that really jumps out at me, and it's always jumped out, is our invisible water. Our Southbury is the shape of a triangle. The entire left western border of the triangle borders water, a river or a lake. But when I used to live on the other side of town off of Kettletown Road, I didn't even know there was a lake here for years, I don't think. And now, of course, I live near the lake, and I see all the boats going by. So I've learned quite a bit. And the teenagers, of course, really like hanging out down there. Huge unexplored opportunities to bring in many sorts of water-related businesses, rental businesses, tour boat things, amusements, places that sell things that you can take out onto the water, like kayaks or jet skis, or et cetera, et cetera. There's so much we can do. The other thing related to the water is our River Road Park, which was closed down. I had gone there a couple times when my son was little, and I thought it was pretty sad there. It was kind of a neglected little park. And now, of course, it's closed altogether. So that certainly could be a good opportunity to sell that maybe to a restaurant who would put in a beautiful, giant terrace that we can all enjoy and bring our families there for dinners. And then part of water also is cleaning it up because, of course, we all can't swim in it right now. It's polluted with blue-green algae. The other thing I wanted to point to is the training school. Obviously, I would love to see our town hall moved to the training school, which would give us a construction opportunity and maybe build those regional facilities that Ed Edelson referred to, because we'd be starting fresh with a remodeled or new facility. That would make a lot of sense also to free up the land on Main Street for development. I'd also like to mention teenagers, because I've raised 3 kids in this town, and there is a very serious drug problem throughout the nation, and our teenagers have nothing to do here. The recreation facility has been talked about, I think, for 3-4 years already. And they hang out at the gazebo, they get in trouble. Certainly, there are many things we could do on Southbury Training School that would attract teenagers. I'm thinking about Storm King in Hudson Valley, a sculpture park. I'm thinking about Tanglewood. And of course, indoor recreation facilities would be beautiful there, alongside a new town hall. So that's it. I'll cut off my remarks there for now, and thank you very much for all your work. And I think this is wonderful that our town is doing this and looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Marilyn Wald, and I live in Oldfield. And I just want to say a gem that we have in this community is the community garden. And when my friends, we used to live in Stamford, and when my friends from Down County, we call it Down County, would come here, and I would tell them, I'm a farmer, a city girl who's a farmer, they would say, how did that happen here? How, my friends wanted to, and I said, I'm going to research it so she could take it back to Stamford and take it back to Norwalk. But it is something that makes this town different from other towns. And I think also, you touched on it, to have more arts, that's how it distinguishes, when you come here and you think of buying here, you think about what does this town have that other towns don't have. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Harmon?
Good evening. I'm Harmon Andrews. I live in Heritage Village, although I've been in town for 47 years. I was a selectman here for about 10 years, and your first selectman for about 2.5 years. 2 recommendations. One, I think you should give consideration to 4-year terms for the Board of Selectmen. I think 2 years, a number of years ago, of course we've been for 200 and some odd 50 years, we've had a Board of Selectmen for 2 years. I think it's time that we to consider a 4-year term for the Board of Selectmen. The second issue, while I've been in town, I was involved with the Woodbury Telephone Company. We wound up with ComSat, which is over on Lake Zor. Excellent taxpayer, 30 employees. Of course, we have when they flooded Lake Zor, that's 4 square miles. CLP is one of the biggest taxpayers in our town. We also have the fiber optic line. There are 2 fiber optic lines running between here, Boston and New York. One goes down the Post Road through Orange, New Haven, that area. The other one comes through Southbury. It comes down Old Waterbury Road, goes all the way down Main Street, over to the Silver Bridge and into Newtown, into New York. IBM put one of the largest telephone switching units that they have. All of their communications go through Southbury. It's a 3-tier system, and a core of about 300 or 400 people are there to run it. The rest of the place is empty, and I think you've identified all the empty space is an opportunity for IBM to bring more people in. But the key to it is the fiber optic line going through town. Now, if there's other people that can tie into that, just go to the telephone company and ask them what else is going on. They're the ones that work with all the different companies in the area, and if they need direct access to the fiber optic line, it's in Southbury. And that's, you should explore that with the telephone company. Those are the 2 items. I think you're doing a good job. I think the big thing is you're explaining a lot of this to a lot of people, and that's very helpful to get people all on the same track. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Harmon. Next. Have we run out? Oh, go ahead.
I'll say something briefly. My name's Ed Naylor. I live on Homestead Road, and yes, I know Jennifer. First of all, thank you very much. This is a tremendous effort that you all are putting forth, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear about it as a citizen. There's been a lot of great comments made here, stuff that I didn't think about. I hope you guys haven't thought about it either. I hope you guys are learning something. I sure have. And I don't want to comment on comments. Southbury is a unique place, as many have pointed out. We've got the farm bunch, we've got the commuter bunch, and we've got kind of this retirement bunch. And there's some of us that kind of move around between all three. But it makes for, as you've said, these three initiatives, they don't go on individually. They're very, very interconnected, as we've heard from the comments. And it's going to be very interesting how you go forward. Why did I move to Southbury? In a nutshell, I was working in Westchester County, and I really didn't want to move this far away. But I looked around, and all the places you can imagine I was looking at were down in Fairfield County. And I had a friend in Southbury I'd visited, two friends that I'd visited a couple of times, so I got to know the town a little bit. When I started looking at houses, I crossed into town, and lo and behold, I was in New Haven County. And my taxes for a nice home, we've since moved within town, but 24 years ago, I think I moved into town and my taxes were about $4,800. Now my taxes are closer to twice that. Not quite. My salary hasn't gone up by twice, but my taxes have. And I get that. That's not all Southbury's fault. That's a lot of Connecticut's fault, and that's a whole different subject. But as far as amenities, and before I get off the tax thing, I mean, you hear it every election cycle. The Heritage Village folks are in a much more dire situation than those of us that are still employed, still in our working years. Amenities, we talk about grand list, and I think Ed had a great comment. Maybe that's not the right path. But everybody wants conveniences. I, like others, I'm willing to travel a little bit to go to a Costco. I don't need a Costco in Southbury. I'm not sure I need a Victoria's Secret either, but I've got one.
I hope not.
So, and that touches on the desirability of commercial expansion. As I said, there's contingents of the town population that probably don't want to do a lot of this, but we have some. That said, if we're careful about it, and if we think about it, how we go about it, there are opportunities. I mean, I see open plots on Main Street. I see, as we've said, the Southbury Training School. There are opportunities if we do it with thought and hopefully with your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Barbara Wheeler, Heritage Village. Go Village, we're really represented here, aren't we, tonight? Okay. As far as the...
Barbara Wheeler.
Wheeler. Okay. The commercial expansion in town. We don't want a big box store. What we want is some economic zone that can use that fabulous fiber line. I mean, that's what we need, something, and New Haven has new economic zones, Hartford has them, and because where we're located, we can attract people, and it's a wonderful place to live for the people that move here and the workers. And I'm not using the right word for what type of, it's scientific research, it's robotics, And maybe it won't bring that many jobs, but it will bring more, it will expand our business taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, that's our next phase, although we started it a little bit a minute ago, but that's okay. I'll make another call. Anybody else want to have public speaking? Hearing none. Okay, let's move to the next part, and we'll ask you to come up, if you are willing, and tell us why did you move to Southbury, what amenities are missing, and what is the desirability of commercial expansion in town.
5
And
minutes,
once-
please.
And once again, tell us your name and your address. Ed, have you moved? So you don't have to do it.
I'm trying, actually, I'm
All
trying.
right, all right, you're okay then.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
so I moved to Southbury 13 years ago because my wife and I were looking for a business, specifically a bed and breakfast, and that we found a house here that was zoned appropriately. Got some great support from Dolores back then. I can't believe it was 13 years ago that you told me how to go about doing this, but I sure appreciate all the guidance you gave me back then. And, you know, we ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw right away. The drive for of that business then, just to show you how things change, was the antique business. Woodbury at that time still had that reputation of having over, I think, 100 antique stores. That was in the process of cratering, again, because of the internet. Why travel up here to see something that somebody could send you a picture via email and tell you, here's what it looks like. You don't need to make the trip. You don't need to stay over. So we found out almost within months of opening that one of our pillars had been pulled out from under us. And I bring that up because I said it before about the internet is a radical shift to every business, and we're seeing it throughout. I don't think we're really seeing the end of it. And it's not just the internet, as you know, as far as retail, but if we talk about driving, cars, we're talking about expanding I-84 to 3 lanes. Some people are saying, that's an old-fashioned idea. We got driverless cars. We're going to be able to use the existing infrastructure a lot better, and we won't need that because travel will become so much more efficient. We also might not need as much parking. I heard a statistic today, there's 8,000 square miles of parking in the United States. The size of New Jersey is all devoted to parking, just so people can have a car waiting for them when they can maybe just call it up in the future. In terms of amenities, I feel very strongly about the Regional Community Center. This is not my idea. As some of you know, it's been around for over 100 years, that this is something we need. Waterbury, I remember, I think, one of my first Economic Development Committee meetings back in 2005, and I think John Turk is here. I thought I saw him. He brought people in from Waterbury to talk about why Southbury is just the perfect location for a regional community center. And we have the population that needs this, and they would love to put it here. And that really brings me sort of the commercial aspect, because one of the reasons is, for a community center being in Southbury, is our location. Tony brought this up before about I-84. We're easy to get to. We're the gateway. And I think it makes a lot of sense for us to think about using those 4 exits and entrances on I-84 for commercial activity. That commercial activity, if it's needed, shouldn't be up in Woodbury. It shouldn't be up in Bethlehem. It should be here in Southbury, because we are such a physical regional center because of I-84, and we should be taking advantage of that. And I think we have to, when we say that, recognize that we can't just think about commercial activity for Southbury. We have to see that we are going to be successful if we think about ourselves as commercial activity that serves the region. You probably can hear in my other comments, I think regionalization is a very important step for not only Southbury, but the state of Connecticut. If we keep going on with 169 towns, each of which thinks it knows best how to do everything, we will never succeed to become competitive with other states, and we will continue to lose people. It means giving up some things. My favorite expression is, if we want things to stay the way they are, something's going to have to change. And we got to think about what those changes are going to be. So I think those are my answers.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address those three questions? We're very informal, so whatever you say is okay.
I mean, I'll just add some things. I mean, for me, I like the aspect that 84 is here. And for me, it's real convenient. I can go down to Danbury, I can find employment there, I can go down to Wilton, I can go to Waterbury. So I can travel a lot through the state, and it is a very good point of being here that I like very much. And at the same time, I live on Lake Zor. I mean, I live in paradise, in a beautiful place, and I can get away from Danbury and get off 84, and all of a sudden I'm just in paradise. And there are a lot of nature preserves, and I'm a photographer, so, you know, that aspect is nice. You know, as far as amenities, you know, yeah, I think sometimes like other types of restaurants, for me that's probably one of the biggest things too, is, you know, I'm not a chips fan. You know, there's not a lot of variety sometimes, and maybe because of the you know, more of a senior population. I'm not a senior. Sometimes, yeah, if there was more things to, you know, not to do so much, I'm not that kind of a person, but more artistic types of things. It was nice to drive down here today and see everybody out on the green and having a nice time and having the music playing. And so for me, that's, you know, more type of things that we could add to the town. And, you know, commercial growth that's not going to kill the air and the environment, but allow people to have a nice place to live and be happy and be at peace. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Mark Antonio, Lorraine. The one issue I'd like to address is what amenities are missing. Many years ago, Drew Morton, rest his soul, and myself worked on the issue of local transportation, of which there is none. And there are a multitude of approaches that we could be taking. I'm not talking about a big bus or, anyway, Drew and I had worked on some. I'd like us to explore that issue for all of us, not just for the seniors. We can get around. I'm talking about the teenagers and regular people. First of all, you won't have so many cars on the road. You won't have as much pollution. You won't waste as much oil, gas, etc. So I would definitely like to do something with local transportation. And in addition, I'd love to be able to get to New York easier, but that's another side issue. Local is the biggie.
Thank you, Lorraine. Please.
Richard Daniel Schumella Sr. from 939A Heritage Village. And this woman behind me just gave me the spot to talk about the fast train that is going to go through Southbury between Boston and New York. And in my opinion, I think that would be a great access of transportation for people to come through, stop, and leave Southbury to show what we have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Armino again. You know why I moved to Southbury, but you know what's interesting when it says amenity? A facility, a service, a convenience, a resource, an appliance, an aid, a comfort, a benefit, a feature, or an advantage, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Noise abatement. If you look at Interstate 84 and the expansion of Interstate 84 to 3 lanes and or a train that's going to be coming through Southbury or where in the proximity of Southbury, the noise is, and we know, because we live up on Community House, off of Community House Road on Pepper Tree Hill Road, that the expansion is going to create even more noise for all parts of Southbury. So if you're not cognizant of that, and then you want to layer in a train for whatever advantage a train's going to be, okay? And it was, I guess, maybe a couple of governors ago, made mention to the fact that there was a concern in the state of Connecticut was no mass transit. Well, mass transit's fantastic, right? And it gets you from here to there. And to the gentleman's point, you know, we could have a destination place being Southbury. That's really important. But noise abatement, all right? Quality of life has to do with how you feel when you're at a concert over in the town of Southbury or at Southbury Plaza, and you hear the whooshing and whirring of trucks on 84 that are all exceeding the speed limit, okay? And my brothers and sisters in the state police all will tell you they just don't have enough resources to slow them all down. So as far as an aid, noise abatement for the town of Southbury.
Thank you, Tom. Please.
Yes, I'd like to address this man's comment about noise abatement. If you notice, you travel interstate highways, they do build noise abatement, which they're doing right now in Waterbury with all this road construction. So there is a way to muffle out the noise. And again, I'm a big one for public transportation because I'm used to hopping a bus and going somewhere. Now I have to hop a horse. Basically, you know, it's a country town. I accept it. I have to get used to it. But nothing like having a fast train to go from here to New York and to Boston. It's an easy commute. Pay your fare and you're gone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I moved to Southbury because I was in New York for 45 years, but I was born in Seymour, Connecticut on the Housatonic River. And it's a beautiful country. I desperately miss New York, but at this point, I want the beauty and the peacefulness of Southbury. So I hope that that never changes. Amenities, because I was a New Yorker, it meant restaurants and quality food. And for some reason, Woodbury has wonderful restaurants, and we don't have that many places. And I don't know why. I can never figure that out. I go to Southbury, I go to Woodbury to have dinner, and it's like, oh, every place is packed. I come here, and it's not, and I don't understand that. And that's just something to think about, if there's a reason for it. And I already told you what I think. We need economic zones that are for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are many people here who I'm sure can answer those three questions because they're simple questions. Would anybody would like to get up and inform us? We're taking notes, and we're being streamed, I believe, by the camera on the wall. So, anybody? Everybody's shy? Everybody's shaking their head, they're shy. Okay. Yes, good point. If you're shy, you can send feedback to us at stratplaninfo@southbury-connecticut.gov, and that comes to the committee. So we'll be able to see whatever you want to say, and there's no limit on the number of times you can do it or the size of the documents you want to upload or attach to your email. We are looking for your input. This strategic plan is not
Done in a vacuum.
Done in the vacuum. Boy, you saved me. I was going to say something else which would have got me in trouble. In any case, we need your input. It's very, very important. So, is there a question? Oh, yes.
You encouraged me.
Well, that's my job, is to encourage you. Go ahead.
Because I'm shy, but I've been doing planning for probably 25 years as a volunteer.
Staying closer to the
I
mic.
started in Oxford, and then I moved to Southbury. So I was on planning for probably 15 years in Oxford, and I don't know, maybe 12 here at least. And so very familiar with plans of conservation and development, very involved in the Oxford update at that time and the Southbury update. And I'd like to emphasize the importance of the survey. The survey that was done for our current plan of conservation and development was done in 2011. Those answers, and we had quite a response, more than most towns. Some of the, and of course, addressed was, these three questions were asked, and many more. The desirability of commercial expansion in town, actually, that's why we came up with sewer avoidance, because there was a desire not to attract regional
Development.
Yes, regional development and other people coming from other areas to Southbury, using our resources and then leaving. It was I don't know the percentage, but it was a high percentage of people that did not want us to be a regional draw, did not want us to become a post road. That was another reason for sewer avoidance. So that's why we have the beautiful streetscape. That's why we don't have the box stores. That's why some of the commercial development that was deemed to be undesirable hasn't happened, because of sewer avoidance.
By the way,
Amenities-
tell us your name and address.
Nancy Clark, 85 Silver Beach Road.
Good, thank you.
Okay. The reason I moved to Southbury, first of all, I wanted to move from Oxford at that point, but also, and I've attended every single public hearing on the power plant, so I have a lot of information if you want any. For instance, and just one aside, we talk about the pollution that doesn't come straight down from the power plant. It's coming 10 miles out. We are getting those particulates here in Southbury. The pollution that will occur has been purchased because it's over the state limit from Pennsylvania to meet the EPA standards. It's not that they meet the standards here in Oxford or in Connecticut. It's been purchased by Tewantic from Pennsylvania. And I don't think too many people are aware of that. It's the noise, the light that we're going to see now 24/7 is different than what we expected. Amenities missing. I agree with another speaker that local transportation for seniors, especially, we have quite a population of seniors in this town. All of the funding, I'm also a planning representative to Council of Governments for Southbury. And all of the funding, I notice, and all the planning goes, of course, to the urban areas. We could have from our selectmen, a better presence, I think, on Council of Governments, better push, not a presence, a push, for some of that funding to come to Southbury. Why not? We're a region of 19 towns. We should have as much pull or feedback or whatever to get funding for our transportation. Why not? Why does it all go to Waterbury and Shelton and Naugatuck? Let's see. I did that. There's another item that comes up with our plan of development in our budget, and that is support for open space. One of the great things about Southbury is our open space. The Southbury Land Trust is wonderful in this town. However, the financial support, the budget support for open space, which used to be significant, is less and less and less every year. If we want to keep our quality of life, we have to support it. And one way we need to support it is in our budgetary process. Anything else I want to say? There are a couple, the speed train has been put off the radar now. It's not. The state just took it off their agenda. So we don't have to.
It was in the papers a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now it's off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it was 50 years anyway.
okay.
I would suggest when you formulate your community, your survey, that you take a look at the 2011 survey as a basis or for suggestions. It was well-received and we got a lot of wonderful input from it. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Did Nancy motivate anyone else from the audience?
I think I'm going to add, Michelle Zomer again, 242 White Birch Drive. I'm going to add to my comments about youth. I actually served on the Park and Recreation Basketball Steering Committee, if you will. The basketball programs in town are run entirely by volunteers. They're a pretty quiet group. There's a man by the name of Paul Lasowitz who probably should be have our new town hall named after him. There's a real problem just trying to get basketball games played in this town because we have to negotiate with the schools and share the use of the facilities, the school facilities with the after-school programs, as well as Middlebury students. It's a large population. And I find myself driving up to New Milford and to Monroe and to Quinnipiac University for my son to play basketball. So again, going to, the need to keep our kids busy. Any of our growth for the future, anything we can do to site facilities, either on training school property or elsewhere, this would be a very desirable direction for our town. When I first moved here, my daughters were already, they were in 5th and 8th grade, and they were so bored by this town. My son now is a teenager, and he's much more adventurous in terms of getting out on his bike and so forth. I do see a lot of kids that are looking for things to do. And certainly it would be our duty to consider that in whatever happens next. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're nearing our 90-minute time slot. We have 4 minutes. Anybody have a 3-minute comment?
I'd like to actually hear from the commission, the task force, if
Oh.
anybody would like to say something. And
If you do, use the mic, so we'll pick it up.
you got to use it. Turn it on. It's not. Yeah.
Hello? I can talk louder than that. I'm Ann Armino. I am the chair of the EDC and also lucky enough to be on this task force with all these great people. You have to understand, just because we're sitting on this side of the table doesn't mean we're just like everybody else here. We love the town as much, if not more, than anybody here. And I am so glad that all these people turned out, all you people turned out tonight, because I think we, need to educate when we do a task force like this. It's not like we're behind closed doors and we're all telling secrets. We like that you're giving us input, and we need that input. So anything you have to tell us, tell us. And I think it's just great that we have all these people here. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, you're educating us, I can tell you that. I've got 4 pages of notes so far, so.
Mary?
Being a resident for 41 years, I think that Southbury is very much the place to be, to live. I've had opportunities to move elsewhere and stayed here. I made my home here, my occupation is here as well. I think that everybody has said what they need to say, and it looks like we're getting a very clear picture of where we want to go forward. So I think that, thank you everybody for being here and for offering what maybe is a confirming thought that we all have had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak if you want to. Don't speak
Yeah,
if you don't. It's not-
speaking is not mandatory, other than for Ron.
No,
I want to
think
hear
it's
what Ron
great.
has
We
to say.
Have a good turnout here. I think that's encouraging.
Very good. Thank you.
I got one over here.
Ron needs 2 mics.
Thank you for inviting me to speak. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. Really, there was a lot of things that were brought up at this conversation today that previously, believe it or not, we hadn't had on the agenda. From regionalization to transportation to what do we want. Well, we all were thinking about what we want Southbury to look like in the future. And it's a mixed bag, and it's going to take a lot of work. I've been working on the Public Works Department, and I've been looking at numbers and all of those kinds of things. And as I look at the numbers, and I'm trying to work on efficiency, the numbers don't really tell you about efficiency. I think we need to not only look at efficiency, but how we deliver it, and are we delivering the right product, and are we delivering the right product at the right time? We have a beautiful town here. I lived in Waterbury all my life, and I got to tell you something. You don't know how good you've got it. It's wonderful here in Southbury in the sense that it's well, like I describe Heritage Village. It's a park. We live in a park, and we shouldn't forget that, and we shouldn't sacrifice that for everything else. But by the same token, we've got to realize that in order to be sustainable, we've got to grow, and we can't just live where we are and expect it to be like that forever. So it's important that we plan, and I thank you for the opportunity, and I got to get off because it's almost 90 minutes.
Thank you, Ron.
You're up, Mayor.
I just want to thank all of you for your comments. Very, very, very helpful. And in particular, I'm leaving this meeting with the real sense of how important public safety is. We have it as one of our topics, but it was reinforced many times, along with looking at really what do teenagers do if they don't have something to do? Where are they going to go? What do they get involved in? So I appreciate those comments very much.
You can pass if you want to.
Well, actually, all right, I will say something because you mentioned growing up in Waterbury, and I grew up in Waterbury, and I just want to tell a quick story. I went to Holy Cross, so I got to know, when I went to high school, so I got to know a bunch of people who lived in Southbury, and one of my friends was going to spend the weekend at my house. Her parents were going to go away, and my parents said, well, she can stay at my house. So she rolled down my driveway, and I heard her mother say, you can't take your rollerblades out. I don't want you rollerblading in this neighborhood. And I was mortified because, I didn't have a lot of money, and I grew up in Waterbury in an apartment, and that's where I lived. And so I said to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to get a good job, and I'm going to move to a town like Southbury. And so that's why I'm on this committee, and I'm very proud to live in Southbury. So I just would like to reiterate that a lot of people brought up some really great ideas, and we really do need to make this a great community for all ages. And I'm a mom of 2 young children, so I hear what you're saying about keeping kids busy. And so I just want to make sure that all ages and interests are represented, and I think we'll do that on this committee.
Robert.
You can pass.
Pressure, person by person. Bob Harrison, multi-generational family in town. I think I'm, 5 generations, my kids are 6. One of the things I'd like to mention is, I've heard so much about how great Southbury is, why we moved here. It's a wonderful town. And I agree. And I do think there are some things that we really need to consider changing, but I think we want to be careful about how fast we proceed. I think we really want to do our due diligence and research, because we don't want to plow ahead so fast that we change the things that we like. So that's really all I want to say is that, I think the comments are good. Let's just take our time and do it correctly.
Good. Thank you, Bob. We need a mic down here from Ron Pugliese.
Coming in here this evening, I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I have to say I'm extremely impressed with the size of the crowd, but much more impressed with the comments that were made. Very well thought out comments on a variety of subjects. Now, I'm going to try to answer the 3 questions, at least 2 of them. My wife and I, we've been here 10 years, and the reason we moved here was because we found a certain type of housing that we were looking for. We're at the courtyard of Heritage Green. If you're familiar with it, it's a beautiful place, and we're extremely happy there. And we had 3 children. They all grew up and left us, so we sold our house and decided that that this particular town and that particular area was perfect for us. I'm going to skip the amenities part. I think a lot of people made some very good comments about that, but I do want to talk briefly about the commercial, or in my view, economic development expansion of the town. I don't think it's something that, and I agree with Bob, I'm not talking about doing something quickly, and it has to be well thought out. But if you want the quality of life that we have in this great town, then it is an absolute essential ingredient of the future is to look at economic development. Absolute essential ingredient. Without economic expansion, the quality of life will suffer and the taxes will increase, and it's very important to, at least in a very intelligent and well-developed plan of development, take your time, and consider it, we're not talking, at least I'm not talking about box stores. I'm talking about very intelligent planning and future. It's absolutely essential. But again, I congratulate all of you that have come out here tonight on a summer's night and made some great comments. And I'm a member of this group. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron. John?
My name is John Riley. I'm on the Board of Finance. I'll tell you, I came here tonight primarily to listen, and listen I have. I've heard what you say. I would just say two other things. I'm an old guy, and it's now past my bedtime.
And I don't want to keep John past his 90 minutes either. But the only thing, I'll reiterate kind of what Ron said. I think when I look at specifically that last question, what goes through my mind is what happens if we don't, right? Not the necessary need to rush in to do something, but where are we in 5 years if we don't do that? When you look at internet and how culture is changing and how life is changing in Connecticut. So that's all I had.
Thanks for coming.
If we want to keep Southbury the way it is in a changing world, we're going to have to work like crazy. Because if we don't, we'll get swept up by all the things that are happening around us. So it's our job, if we just want to stay the way we are, to put on a full court press. If we want to be better, as Paul has indicated, which I think we all do, then we have to do the types of things that we're doing tonight. And I thank, obviously, our task force and all of you people have given up time tonight to come out here. Thank you very much.
Justin, do you have anything to add?
I don't have a lot to add, frankly. Perhaps I should be the one to make the motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.